Thanks very much. And good evening and nice to meet you all. So as you introduced, my name is Jun Liu. I'm an associate professor from the University of Copenhagen. And it's also my great honor and pleasure to be invited to the SAPERE AUDE lecture this evening. So today I'm going to talk about my project. So that's to use or not to use a relational approach to information and communication technologies as repertoire of contention. So this project explores the choices people make when using digital communication technologies, like the internet and social media, as tools for political movement and social justice. So, as I said, so the term actually, this type of tool, that's political movement related tool, is also known as repertoire of contention. So we know that the internet and social media are more pervasive than ever today, and they have changed many things in our everyday life, from the day we work to the day we socialize, the way we socialize. And especially what we see is that these digital communication technology have changed the way we engage in social and political action. So when I say social and political action, the term refers to, you could say, plenty of examples all around the world where people are leveraging digital communication technologies like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok to fuel unprecedented movement for social justice and to push for political change, such like the global Me Too movements against sexual abuse and harassment, and the Black Lives Matter movement in protest of racial injustice and inequality. So you could say, generally speaking, it seems to be that we are facing a kind of a same phenomenon that social and political action is increasingly mediated and enabled by digital communication technologies. But I have identified an intriguing observation. And as you are going to see in the next slides, the ways people choose and use digital communication technologies in political movement are dramatically different across events, contexts, and society. So as you can see here in the top left-hand corner, you can see an image with hashtag and triple Fs. So that refers to Twitter's hashtag, Fridays for Future. And this hashtag calls thousands of young activists all around the world, and in this case, that's in Germany, to skip classes to protest climate change in Fridays. And then below that image, you can see Facebook. That helps incite the mass anti-government protests and demonstration in Egypt during the Arab Spring. And then the term TikTok war has been coined to call the Russia-Ukraine war, because TikTok becomes part of the front line of the war with messagings and videos decrying the war from anti-war activists. And last but not the least, if we move eastward to Hong Kong, then what we can see is that the instant messaging service Telegram facilitate upheavals in 2019 and 2020 during the anti-extradition law amendment bill movement and calling for democratic reform. So what we have just seen is that activists, they adopt different digital technologies in their political movement across events, contexts, and society. So one could probably ask why Egyptians largely adopt Facebook, but not other social media to organize protests. Or you could also say why Hong Kong protesters in their civil disobedience campaign not use Twitter, which is very often recognized as an indispensable tool for protests elsewhere in the world, like the Black Lives Matter movement. So you could say all these kind of questions leads to the substantial question this project aims to investigate. And the questions are, why do people choose, appropriate, and maneuver some but not other technologies in and for political movement in specific context, as we just see in the cases of protests, demonstration, and revolutions around the world. And then what is the reasoning behind protesters' decision on the use and non-use of specific digital communication technologies. So how much do we know about technology in political movement around the world? So in one of my early work published in 2020 by Oxford University Press, I surveyed the knowledge on this topic, and I observed a tendency of scholars to focus on what kind of communication technologies people use in political movement. So that's like what we see in the examples. We observe activists use Facebook in the Egyptian uprising, Twitter in the climate change school strikes, and Telegram in Hong Kong, and TikTok in the Russia-Ukraine war. So we know a great deal about the technology people use in political movement. But on the contrary, we know very little about why people choose some but not all available communication technologies, and how people decide on specific political use of certain technologies. So that's because current dominant focus is on, as I say here, what rather than how, and why or why not. So this focus fails to uncover the causal conditions, you could say, that appear to explain specific use and non-use of technologies in political movement. So subsequently, you could say we have a limited understanding of this underlying decision-making process made by people. So that process drives the adoption and non-adoption of technology, as well as their specific uses in political movement in discrete contexts. So that's why I believe that a substantial research program is needed in order to examine the underlying decision-making process, because it should not be a taken for granted process. So the original innovative and groundbreaking idea in my project is to explore a big picture question of how people take choices regarding technology adoption and use in political movement. So that is, we are not taking the choice and use of technology as repertoire of contention for granted, and we are not just narrowly focusing on what kind of communication technology people use. So instead, we look at all available technologies for individuals and societies at risk, and then investigate how and why these individuals or communities choose some from all available technologies and discard other ones. So to find out the answer to this question, as you can see from the title of the slides here, so I put emphasis on people's perceptions, interpretations, and deliberations when considering the meaning of technologies and when turning technology into repertoire of contention. So by doing so, the project acknowledges a reality where people perceive and appropriate technology in relational, diverse ways, and such ways turn into causal conditions to explain the variations in both use and non-use of technologies in political movement. So how am I going to carry out the project after I have all these exciting, promising, but also challenging inquiries? So the answer is through an innovative research design consisting of two techniques, comparison and triangulation. So let's look at comparison first. So comparison in this project aims to make groundbreaking contribution to explain why political movements across the world have similarities or differences regarding the use and non-use of communication technologies. So as we will explore, even the same technology would entail different meaning across contexts, because people could have different interpretation, perception, and deliberation on the technology. And one of the key ways to uncover this diversity is through comparison or comparative studies. And this comparison design further make this project distinct from most existing single country study of technology and political movement. So in practice, This project involved cases of political movements with pressing topics like climate change, like social justice and equality, and the cases spanned across the European Union, the Middle East, the United States, and China from, as you can see here, database like the Global Protest Tracker. And by doing so, we will uncover factors to consider when people choose some from all available technologies for political movement. And if comparison looks at both similarity and differences across cases, then you could say triangulation means study a phenomenon with multiple perspectives. And in this project, triangulation will provide us with much needed knowledge on the meaning of communication technology, as I emphasized earlier. And it will do so by looking at both the moment of political movement, so that's on your right hand, and everyday life, that's on your left hand. So this also makes my project different from most existing scholarship with an exclusive focus on political movement per se, because different from this scholarship, I believe that political movement cannot be examined in isolation from the context of everyday life that has come to generate and influence it. So subsequently, the meaning of communication technology is not only situated in the moments of political movement, not just situated in protest, revolution, but more importantly, you could say it resides in structure of everyday life. And the specific ways people perceive, interpret, and maneuver digital technology in everyday life shape the use and non-use in political movement. So to sum up, I believe the project will generate badly needed knowledge, and knowledge that recognizes diversity and heterogeneity of our society when adopting technologies to pursue social justice, given the project's comparative and global perspective. And it will also provide knowledge that recognizes the relevance of placing the use and non-use of digital technologies in political movement into a big picture of everyday life. And we also have a website for this project already, so you can find more information, keep updated about the progress of the project as well as various activity. And thank you for your attention.